Lesson 26 is real similar to Lesson 25. It's just titled More Complicated Equations. I know that's probably not your favorite type of title to see, but that's just how the game is played. As you learn more and more things, you'll be expected to be challenged a little bit more than you were in previous lessons. And I know you can handle it. Just give yourself some time to get used to the new types of problems, and eventually they'll become easy for you. Now when you're doing these problems, what I've written on the top there in red is a real important thing to keep in mind. When you're solving equations, your goal is to isolate the variable. It depends on the type of equation that you're doing. The steps may be different, but that's always your goal, is to isolate the variable. Get it on one side of the equation and then solve for it. Let's go ahead and do some practice problems. Look at practice problem A. 3x minus 4x equals 2x plus 3. So I want you to solve that for x. So how are you going to do that? Well, there's a new first step that you're going to do besides just doing the addition rule or the multiplication rule. On a problem like this, the first step would be to add like terms together. So look at that on the left. You have two like terms. You have a 3x and a negative 4x. So let's go ahead and add those together, and we'd end up with a negative x. And then write down what's left on the right, 2x plus 3. And all this time, keep in mind, your goal here is to isolate the variable. So I still have an x on the left and an x on the right. So I could use my addition rule to just get the x on one side. And I'll go ahead and do this so that I get the x on the left side. I'll add a negative 2x to both sides. So that'll cancel what's on the right. On the left, I'll end up with negative 3x, and then that equals positive 3. Okay, so now I have the variable on one side. I just need to eliminate the coefficient, that negative 3. So now I can use the division rule, divide both sides by negative 3. That eliminates negative 3 on the left. X equals negative 1. So on any of these types of problems, if you keep in mind that your goal is to isolate the variable when you're doing a solution for an equation, that will help you think about what to do. You already know how to add like terms, so I hope that you saw that right away, that on the left side, oh, I could add those two variables together, the 3x and the negative 4x, and since they're like terms, I can add them. That'll simplify that expression on the left. Then I can use my addition rule and just get the variable on one side and then go ahead and solve for it. Look at practice problem B. Let's go ahead and solve that one for B. So on the left side of the equal sign, we can see we have several like terms there, several B terms. And we know that we're going to be solving for B. That's the only term in there. If there's more than one term, we couldn't just solve that equation for a specific number. So we have 4B, 2B, and 6B. Let's go ahead and add those together. That would equal 12B. And then put the negative 7 on there too. And then on the right we have 2B minus 11. Now let's go ahead and get the variable just on one side. So we could do that by adding a negative 2B to both sides. We could add a negative 12B to both sides as well, but I just want to get it on the left. And so that cancels on the right, and we end up with 10B minus 7 is equal to negative 11. Now it's looking more like an equation that we've worked with before. It's taken us a few steps to get there, but we know what we could do now. Use the addition rule to get rid of that negative 7 on the left, and we have 10B is equal to negative 4. Now use the division rule to get rid of the 10, and so that cancels on the left. On the right, negative 4 over 10, that can simplify down to negative 2 over 5. And so B is equal to negative 2/5. So in that problem, we kept in mind our goal was to isolate the variable, just get it on one side. We saw that we had several like terms on the left, so we added all of those together first. then we got the variable just on the left. It doesn't matter if we got it on the left side or the right side. That's just what I decided to do on that problem, is get it over on the left. And then we isolated the variable just by itself by using the addition rule. Then we use the division rule to get rid of the coefficient. Let's do one more problem. Look at this one. We have an equation here, and I want you to solve that equation. And so we see that the variable in that equation is c. That's the one that we'll be solving for. And so look on the left side, and we'll just work with the left side right now, and we'll try to add like terms there and simplify the algebraic expression on the left side of the equal sign. And we have a 7c, a 4c, and a negative c. So that would be 11c minus c is equal to 10c plus 19. And then on the right side, we have an 11c and a positive 2c. So that would be 13c. And then we have minus a negative 4. That would just be positive 4. So we can go ahead and simplify those negative signs there. Now we have a more simplified form, and we can go ahead and isolate the variable just on one side of the equal sign. So let's go ahead and put it on the left side. We'll add a negative 13c to both sides. That cancels what's on the right. On the left, we have negative 3c plus 19 is equal to 4. Okay, now we can continue to isolate the variable. We could do that by adding a negative 19 to both sides. So the 19's cancel on the left, and we have negative 3c is equal to negative 15. Divide both sides by negative 3. That'll be our last step to solve for c. And so negative 15 over negative 3 is a positive 5. And so c is equal to a positive 5. So anytime you're solving an equation for the variable in it, the goal is to isolate that variable on one side. There are different types of problems, different types of equations that you'll come across. That's always your goal. Sometimes you'll have to add like terms, like these problems that you've been doing. You have to do that first, and that will always be a first step. If that is something you have to do, you do that first. Then use your addition rule, then use your multiplication rule to isolate the variable and solve for that problem. Okay, well that's all for lesson 26.